I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knitted family, even though I came from a poor family. But they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had were big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. So coming from another country gave me that insight to be able to understand and deal with people from different backgrounds.
I was walking into Kroger to pick up a prescription for my mom. Upon approaching the pharmacy, I slipped and fell in some liquid. I went to see my regular doctor, and that is when I knew that there was more going on from that fall. I then called Mr. Olawale, talked to him and let him know what was going on. I could just say that he's very professional and knowledgeable about what he does. He's very passionate about what he does, and he cares about his clients. I felt like I was a part of the Olawale family.
The goal is to make sure that our clients will leave feeling that someone gets them, knowing that someone was able to be the voice for them.
We needed an attorney because we needed somebody who understood the relationship between our case and the law. We had been through 4 different lawyers. We were very desperate. We knew from what we had heard that Emmanuel Olawale was the man, who could take us through that experience and see us through and give us the kind of outcome we were looking for. For him, your case is personal. He gave us hope. He gave us encouragement, and we knew that we had found the right man that would see us through.
Just know that when you're coming through the door, you're coming in through a place where you will be accepted and welcome as family, where you'll be seen as a person. At the Olawale Law Firm, we get you. We understand you. Trust us. Welcome to this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel Olawale. My guest today is all the way from Georgia, and he's not just a musician, he's also an attorney that protects the right of creatives. His name is Ryan Schmidt. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Ryan Schmidt. I'm a partner here at the Bowen Law Group in Savannah, Georgia. Been here since 2018. Before that, before law school, really, I was a touring musician for 10 years, starting first up in Boston and then moved down to Nashville as a songwriter and toward the country as a singer-songwriter, releasing a couple albums and stuff like that. And then once I saw the different aspects of the industry, what the industry is known for, and its bad treatment of artists, I really got disillusioned and wanted to go to law school and be an advocate for creators.
You mentioned that you were touring before you went to law school. What was that like? Tell us about the tour.
Yeah, it was a great experience. So my undergraduate was in Boston at Northeastern University, and part of their program is these experiential learning semesters where you have your whole semester and you get to go out and do something. A lot of more traditional majors like business or finance, you would get, essentially a paid internship for a whole semester. Well, since I was a music business major, I went to my faculty advisors and I said, I've got a few albums under my belt. I really want to make a run at this after college. What if I do my own, build my own program where essentially I book a full 3-month nationwide tour, starting up in Boston, going down to California, down the southern part of America and back up. And much to the credit of the faculty's advisors, they accepted that proposal. I wrote an album and I toured the country, and that was really my first real experience on what the real world outside of my bedroom and playing music was like. And it was eye-opening. I loved it, and it was also terrifying and rife with controversy. So that was the start of it. And then after college, I was fortunate enough to meet up with some booking agents who were able to get me some more steady shows, and played a lot of colleges for a number of years.
Oh, wow. So what kind of music do you play? What's the genre?
So it's acoustic singer-songwriter is the best way to describe it. Think of like John Mayer or Bob Dylan, just folk guitar. Just I was always the solo guy. And when I would record with a full band, but it was always easiest just for me to get in my car, get on the road with just the guitar and perform. And so that's what I did.
Yeah, that was impressive as a college student putting a tour together. Did you have a manager? How did you get to book venues?
So I was fortunate that I had teamed up with a really well-known recording studio in Boston who had a few commercial successes, and they were able to point me in the right direction of different venues they had connections with across the country. But for the most part, it was just a whole bunch of cold calling and emails kind of out of the blue saying, can you take a shot on me? I'd love to play your bar in Chicago on a Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. And, there's a whole bunch of emails that went ignored and that people said no, but there was enough that people said yes that put a whole tour together. And luckily it was a situation where, one night I'd play a bar, another night I'd play a college. So I was actually getting paid for that one. And then another night I might be playing, a private show. So it was very different experience each city I went to.
Yeah. So what was it like to be on tour and also being a student?
It was that was pretty eye-opening. I remember I think this was in 2011 or so. And I remember I was in West Virginia, and I was in a really rural part. I just played WVU, and I was staying at some off-campus housing. And I remember that the next day I had to register for the next semester's classes, but I couldn't for the life of me find any place that had internet connection. So that was a tough one that I remember I had to get up really early and drive maybe a half hour away to find some coffee shop so I could register for classes. That was probably the biggest challenge I had, was just kind of staying connected to that world.
Yeah. So when did you realize or determine that the tour is over?
Yeah, it had a finite deadline because I had a few anchor shows. I knew that I needed to be in Austin, Texas in the middle of March for this festival, South by Southwest. And that goes on every single year. And that was the first year that I played it. And I was fortunate enough to play it for a few more years after that. So I knew that I needed to be there. And then from there, I mapped out a few different locations. Okay, so I'm going to be in LA on this date. I'm going to need to be here on this date. And from there, it would be what's a town or city within 4 to 8 hour drive, and let's map out this pretty logical way to get across the country and back. So I had anchor shows in the beginning, middle, and end that would get me back to Boston.
Wow. So you mean you drove all through the tour?
Yeah, I got my Honda Civic and just drove across the country and back.
Wow, very impressive. And you grew up in New Hampshire.
I did.
What was that like?
It's very different than Georgia. It was great. It was a great experience. Grew up in a small town. Not even a single traffic light or anything in the town. Just really, really rural New Hampshire. But fortunately, right on the northern border of Massachusetts. So my access to Boston was a quick 45-minute drive on the highway. So that's really what became my home base for my music when I was first getting started.
Yeah. Do you have any fond memories of New Hampshire, New England?
I do and I don't, right? So New Hampshire is beautiful. I missed the winters, and I used to love skiing growing up, and I loved all of that. I don't miss the shoveling at all. I don't need a shovel in Savannah, Georgia, and I can't remember the last time it snowed, which is pretty nice. And I think also the people are so different. The people down south are a lot more approachable and friendly. If you acted the way I act now in Savannah, if I acted with that same sense of familiarity and comfort and hospitality up north, they might think I'm trying to scam them out of something. Maybe I've got some ulterior motives. But there's also the benefits to that is once you find a good person and you connect with them and you get that trust, then they're really loyal, and that's my family. So still have plenty of connections there.
So what brought you to Georgia?
So Georgia wasn't the plan, so to speak. When I graduated college in Boston, I thought I wanted to be in either New York, LA, or Nashville, the three three main music hubs in the country. And my sister lived in New York City, and that was kind of too much of a zoo for me. I went out to LA, gave that a shot. That wasn't quite my scene either. And I stayed with some musician friends in Nashville for about a 2-week trip right after college. And I really liked what was going on there. I liked the people. I liked that it wasn't so much of this big chaotic city. People seemed to all kind of know each other. And so I wanted that small town feel in a major industry hub. So Nashville was the plan. And I thought once I moved there that I was going to be there forever. My girlfriend I went to high school with came down to Nashville with me, and she went to SCAD in Savannah, where we are now. And she always wanted to eventually come down to Savannah. Well, I thought that's not going to really work because the music industry in Savannah, there's not a lot of clubs. There's not a bunch of big businesses, record labels, publishing companies that can support what I wanted to do. It wasn't until I started going to law school and going through that track that I realized that this is actually the perfect place for an entertainment law practice. And that's where I met up with my now partner, Bo Bowen, who was doing the same thing for film and television.
Yeah, that's quite impressive. So when did you realize that, or when did you discover your talent for music?
You back?
So when did you determine your talent for music?
It was pretty early on. I remember we were in grade school. I think it was probably going into the 3rd grade. We went to the local high school, and they had all of these instruments laid out, and you would either have to make an election that you're going to go join chorus, join the orchestra, or join the band. And I remember that whole day I got to play just about every single instrument. I tried a bunch, liked some, hated some, and I really got attracted to the saxophone. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. And it didn't hurt that it was also like one of the few instruments that I picked up that immediately I could make some sort of noise out of that wasn't terrible. So I was like, all right, this is my thing. And I picked it up pretty quickly. It was something that I was really excited about and really passionate about, and stuck with that. Did a whole bunch of private lessons to the point where by middle school, I was in a jazz band with the school that was playing with some pretty prominent jazz. I remember I would play jazz festivals with like the Marsalis family and stuff like that. when I was 12, 13 years old. So that's where it all started. It was pretty good. It was pretty good indication that I was not so terrible at it, and I also really enjoyed doing it. So it started with saxophone, but then when I went into high school, I switched schools, and the music program at the new school was terrible. They didn't have an organized band and anything, so that was it for me with saxophone. And so I had to figure out some other way to be creative. And I had a guitar, and I had been playing around with it for a little bit. And I remember that summer going into freshman year, I really started digging into these old albums, learning some cover songs, and eventually started writing my own songs.
So you started off playing the saxophone, then you graduated to playing the guitar because you moved to a new school.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that transition like for you to change school during high school?
It was great. I mean, so it was voluntarily. I was at a public school, and there was nothing wrong with what was going on there. But I knew that I had a very specific track that I wanted to go. I wanted to, in the music business and all that wasn't on the table. But I knew kind of early on, my parents really instilled in me, if you want to get into a good school, then you've got to start early and you got to go the certain high school track. So it was a strategic move to get me to the school that I wanted to go to, which was Northeastern. And the transition was great. It was very, very different from a public school in New Hampshire, where basically anything goes and you're not going to get detention unless you're really doing something bad, to then going to this private Catholic high school where you're taught by nuns and brothers and all that stuff. And it was very strict. And I remember it was probably the first week there, I did something where I immediately got detention, and they said, you're not in public school anymore. You got to straighten up. And it taught me a lot of discipline. It was a great program.
It was more discipline in Catholic school. And then you decided that you wanted to pursue your dream as a musician. So you went on The Voice.
Yeah. So that was on my last semester of college. I got an email from a producer of The Voice. And those reality TV shows do a really good job of making people think that it is, you find talent solely by sitting outside an arena for 8 hours and finally getting your big shot and, them picking you out of obscurity. But the truth is that there are producers, there are basically casting directors that are always online, always looking for new talent that they can feature on their program. So me being in Boston at the time, I was very tuned in with Berklee College of Music, where a lot of, very, very successful musicians have come out of. And my quasi manager at the time was running the on-campus music venue at Berklee. And so one of the first stops that The Voice did in the Boston area was they reached out to Berklee staff, and they said, is there anybody that you think we really need to take a look at? And my name kind of came in the running, and they reached out to me. And it was a million different things that went into the program before you actually see what's on TV. I mean, we went to Chicago and I did an audition, and then we went to LA and we did an audition, and then they said, we like that audition, so how about you come back to LA for another whole month, and you're gonna be there with 150 other talented, like-minded people and try to do a go at this show. It was a great experience, but ultimately an experience that led to me being a lawyer.
Oh, so they scouted you out. They sent you an email to be on the show.
What was that? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I said they scouted you out. They came searching.
Yeah,
absolutely. Not the other way around. How did you feel when you got that email?
At first, I thought it was fake, because because there's so many people out there that are just, scamming people, especially artists. Artists get scammed a lot because they've got these dreams and they want to feel validated. But I called the person back and they were real, and they followed up with an official NBC email address and everything, and it was very flattering and also very terrifying because I've been doing it at this level, and this is a potential to take my audience to a whole different level. So I was excited, and also had the right amount of fear as well.
And you mentioned that experience led you to start considering law as a career. How was that?
So this was, what you have to remember is this, they reached out to me my last semester of college. And my idea was, after college, I'm just going to move to one of these cities, Nashville, LA, or New York, with my guitar, and I'm going to try to make a run at this and do this full time. And they reached out to me. I think I flew out to the first stage that was ultimately led to the filming of the episodes a week after I graduated college. So it just was a really quick transition. And as part of that process, you get assigned different producers who are building a story around you. These reality shows, and in television in general, but reality shows are really good at trying to find the narrative and who is this character. So for me, I'm this guy, and at that point, I'm 22 years old. I'm a guy who just really enjoys music, right? And that's not a great story because everybody else is somebody that likes music. There's somebody that had a car accident, they almost died, and there's somebody else that has this rare disease. What's your angle? So I remember my producer trying really hard to find that angle, and she finally says, well, if music was gone tomorrow, say nobody turns around for you in this competition, what would you do? And so I thought, well, I just graduated from this music business program, and I was most fascinated with contracts and copyrights and the legal elements of the music business that really structures the whole heart of the industry. And I said, well, maybe I'll go to law school and I'll be an entertainment lawyer. And that was, her eyes lit up and she said, that's your hook. You're the law student kid. And that was kind of my story on the show. But the funny thing about that was I didn't really know anything about going to law school, or I didn't even know that the law school entrance exam was called the LSAT at that time. But you're just playing this character and you're running with it. So I said, yeah, that's genuine enough. I've got some interest in that, so I'll be the law student kid. And it wasn't until a few years later where I was in Nashville and I was really burnt out with music and wondering, I just got engaged and I'm thinking about my future and wanting to have kids and all this stuff. I'm thinking, in 10 years from now, if I'm here doing the same exact thing, I don't know how I'm going to make it. And so I'm having this conversation with my now wife. And she said, well, if it's not music, what would you want to do? And that same conversation with the producer immediately came to mind. And I said, I would like to be an entertainment lawyer. And I said, but I don't think I can do that. I'm a simple guy that writes songs and plays guitar. And she said, you absolutely can do that. And it was through her confidence in me that really led me to take that leap to go to law school and ultimately meet up with a practice here in Savannah that is doing that.
Wow. When you took that leap and you started law school, what was law school like for you? Was it what you expected, or was it so different from what you've been to? What was it like? So, after you made that leap, what was law school like for you?
It was great. I loved law school. I just, it completely changed everything about me in the way that I thought almost overnight. I was a pretty insecure person by the time I entered law school. I had been doing music more or less full time for 10 years and getting rejected on a daily basis. You know, here's why you can't play this show. Here's why you can't tour with this person. Here's why you can't get signed to our label. And so I was, fully, the voice, I obviously didn't go on to win the show, and I'm not, winning a Grammy. So all of that really, brought my confidence to an all-time low. And where I thought maybe I just can't succeed. And when I entered law school, I realized that unlike music, this was an institution where there was a one-to-one correlation between effort and results. I could sit in my bedroom and I could write songs 24 hours a day and send a million emails and just work as hard as I could. But there was no guarantee that was going to translate to this next level of success, because a lot of that was dependent on somebody else, a gatekeeper, saying yes. But in law school, it was my efforts directly correlated to the results that I wanted to get. So now I started building confidence. Now I started realizing that I had these skills that could help people, and it really changed my whole life.
And you got your first shot at practicing in entertainment law practice during law school as a clerk.
Yeah, when I was in Nashville, first the program itself, Belmont University in Nashville, it's a law school that is really only, I think it's in its 12th year now, but it really has made some great strides. I think year after year, it's up on the top. And I think it was the top last year for bar passage rates, first-time bar passage rates in the country, because they put such a big emphasis on post-law school life and practice. But since we're in Nashville and we're so connected to the music industry, the main artery of Nashville music is this one street called Music Row. That is right across the street from the law school. Music and entertainment law was like a separate track that you could go in law school. So basically, I did all the general law that you need to be able to graduate and take the bar, but I also kind of minored in all these foundational entertainment things, contracts, copyright law, intellectual property, entertainment law, music matters, stuff like that. So by the time I got out, I really had a lot of experience seeing a lot of different areas, and there was never a lack of opportunities in Nashville for local companies that needed kind of in-house legal interns and stuff like that.
And what makes entertainment law different from other areas of the law?
It's a really funny area of the law. It's really a subset of business law, because everything more or less comes from a contract, right? Where it differs is that in order for you to be successful and get what your client deserves, you also have to learn the language and the ways of that industry as well. So just because somebody can read that contract, somebody that might do real estate law might be able to read a record deal and know what the words say on the page. They might not necessarily know if that 15% royalty rate is standard in the industry. If it's a good deal, it's a terrible deal. So I think that also is what makes it really fun and exciting, is that for me with music, and then my partner Bo for film and television, we also consider ourselves, lucky that we work in these industries and we're part of these industries that we also have to become experts in.
So if someone walks into your office today and say, well, I'm a musician, I'm about to sign this contract, what are those things that they have to look out for? How do you protect them?
Well, one of the first things that I always look for, especially now, because I mentioned, is this a legitimate contract? Is this a legitimate company? Because there are so many scammers out there, especially targeting people that have a dream, whether it's somebody that's a screenwriter and desperately wants that show to be picked up by Netflix, or they're a musician and they want their first big break and they want to be signed by Sony Records. There are a lot of people out there that exploit that hope. And, a lot of those times, you got to first look at how are those opportunities being presented to you. If they are coming from a direct message in Instagram, for example, out of the blue, cold call, that is a pretty good indication that this might not be a legitimate opportunity, because that's not really the way that this is handled. Maybe they would reach out to you via your actual contact information on your website, through an email, a phone call. But there's a lot of like fake Sony Records type people on Instagram that will send contracts and do that. The other thing to keep in mind is, if anybody ever asks you if they want to hire you, if they want to sign you to a record deal, they want you to have your screenplay turned into a movie on Netflix, they're hiring you. And part of that hiring means they have to pay you. You're being hired. If somebody else that's presenting you this opportunity for a record label, for a film deal, is asking you to send them money, it's no good, because it doesn't work like that. And really what that means is they're trying to make a quick buck by exploiting your hopes and dreams. So that's the first thing I look for is this even a legitimate deal? And a lot of things that come across my desk fail that first test because it's just so prevalent. If it is a legitimate deal, and I kind of like to say that I go a little bit deeper than maybe some other entertainment lawyers would go, that I watch the show Catfish, and I'm up on all the tools to make sure that things are legitimate. I really kind of track what these companies are doing. And even if they are legitimate, what's their reputation? Is this somebody that you really want to work with? Assuming you meet those hurdles, and I say, okay, well, this seems like a legitimate enough company. Let's look at the contract itself. Then I'm looking at fairness. And the music industry is rife with examples of just all these contracts that were completely one-sided and unfair. I've received phone calls from singers who sang on gold records 40 years ago, never saw a single cent off of it. That's criminal in my opinion. But they also didn't have somebody championing for them. They probably didn't have a contract, and obviously statute of limitations is well run on that. So I look at fairness. Is this going to be a situation where you're going to start a business relationship out of respect, like a business partnership with a company? Or is this really something where this company is looking to exploit you because you have something they want, this music, this sound, this look, and they're going to leave you whatever scraps are left over? So the traditional model is that they're gonna exploit you and use you. I generally look for a more equitable deal where things are split more 50-50. If I'm providing the talent, you're providing the capital, we're going in business together. And then, one of the other most important things is term. How long is this contract going to be? How long am I going to be in it? And one of the things that I often have to remind artists is that it's advantageous to have the shortest term possible. Artists get very flattered by the fact that this label wants me for the next 15 years. That's great. They want a big contract. That really undercuts your negotiating power, especially if in year 5 you start getting really successful and you could have otherwise entered bigger and better deals. So I say the less amount of time, the smallest amount of time you can have under a contract is in your best interest.
But then most often times, because people are dying to be discovered and they just want to sign the deal, how do you convince them that that is not in their best interest?
For people that really, they understand how bad it is and they just want that opportunity no matter what, it's those people are impossible to convince otherwise. They've made up their mind. And there's certain contracts where it makes sense that you're going to be signing a deal that isn't, completely fair, and it's favored for the other side if the opportunity outweighs that potential imbalance. Like, for instance, The Voice, the contracts weren't great, but we all knew that if you wanted to participate, this was the cost to entry, was you're going to sign this contract. And if you weren't going to sign it, then there was 100 other people in line that were going to. So that was where it made sense to, go with a not so great deal for the opportunity. But generally, if it's a bad deal, I try to just speak reason to people of what that would look like years down the road. If you've got this deal where you're providing all the talent, all the music, all the effort, and what they did was out the gate was they cut the check for you to go to the studio, but now they own 90% of everything, 100% of the recordings and 90% of the revenue streams in perpetuity. Are you going to be able to live off that 10% for the rest of your life? And that's assuming that the label did what they were supposed to do, it got some traction, and it made some money. A lot of music, unfortunately, fails to break even. So 10% of nothing is a whole lot of nothing. So those are the things that I try to talk to people, but it's tough. I try to run the balance of being excited for clients with them and also letting them know that there's a good time to walk away from deals when they don't serve you.
Thank you. Do you sometimes see your former self in some of your clients?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, I think when I was doing music and I released my first album when I was 17 years old, and I was releasing music up until I think my last recording came out when I was 27. So I was a solid 10 years of touring, singer-songwriter, stuff like that. I had this belief that I could just grind through it all and I could do it all myself. I'm gonna outwork everybody. I'm gonna write more songs. I'm gonna record more. I'm gonna play more shows. But part of that is that I lost sight of the value of community and building up others around you. And I think that that's something that I try to remind my clients, that it's going to be a really tough, really frustrating career if you have convinced yourself that you got to do it by yourself. And I mean, the same is true in all business, really, but especially in this world, if you're good at singing and writing songs potentially, that doesn't mean that you're great at running the finances of the money that's coming in. So why do that? So that's one of the big things that I learned along the way. The other thing was just having a healthy balance of your expectations and your goals, and realizing what are in your control and what are outside of your control. If your goal is to be a musician, keep working on that craft. Keep writing songs every day, keep recording music, keep doing all that. As long as you're doing that, in my mind, you're successful, because you are doing what you're called to do, and you're probably on the path to make the best music that's going to affect people and get the attention that you want. If your goals are external, like appearing on, the Jimmy Fallon show or winning a Grammy or having X amount of followers, first of all, these things are completely out of your control. But they're also focusing on the wrong parts. That will come if you work on your craft and you're great at it. So start there.
Thank you. In your line of practice, do you also assist talent to find a home?
To find a deal? Is that what you mean?
Yes, correct.
That is a common misconception of entertainment lawyers, and I think there's many entertainment law books or music industry books. I remember I read them when I was in high school, looking into going into these careers, that said, you got to build this team. You need a manager, you need an agent, you need a lawyer, you need this, you need that. And when they get to the lawyer, they say, well, the lawyer is really great because the lawyer can do your contracts and knows this and that, and can potentially represent you in court and all this stuff. But they also, since they work with all these people that they do these contracts with, they can just pick up the phone with the head of Sony and say, hey, I've got this artist that came today, and I really think you should sign them. That is not really how it works. And I'm sure at some point there's been a entertainment lawyer who was the fraternity brother of somebody who went on to be the executive, and that has happened, but it's very rare. So there's a lot of artists that call, whether they're screenwriters, directors, musicians, that call us and say, can you get us in touch with so-and-so? And we say, we're not a pitching company. That's something where you can get an agent, you can get a manager, and those are really the more appropriate people anyway, because they've got these working relationships with the people that actually make those decisions. What I say to them is, what legal work can I do for you? Is there a contract that you need me to review? Is there a contract you need me to draft? If it's the right case, is there a matter that I can represent you in? But always tying it back to, I'm a lawyer, and these are legal roles that I fill, and I'm not a talent agent.
Thank you. And what are the fundamentals of a music contract, for instance?
So for a recording contract, and it's changing, and it's kind of, my eyes have been opened to this new landscape and spectrum of music contracts. Excuse me. But the traditional model of a recording contract was, there was this artist and there was this label, and the artist wrote songs and was good, and the label had money and had marketing and connections and stuff like that. So the label would pay the artist to go to the studio and record, and in turn, the label would own all the recordings, and they would pay that artist back based on some royalty rate. But it gets really complicated and unfair, because say the label paid in advance. They advanced you $50,000 just for you to live for the next year while you worked. And then they paid $50,000 for you to record your album. You're in the hole for $100,000 before we even make any money. But it's not like, they get to then reimburse that money on dollar one that comes in. No, the old model is your 10% is going to go to refunding that $100,000. Meanwhile, our 90%, we're going to earn on dollar one and just make profit after profit after profit. So the artist is always in the hole, and the only chance of them actually seeing another penny past that initial investment is to have this mega success, and for that small percentage to reach that breaking point and then start making real royalties. That was the traditional model. It still exists to some extent, but now there are a lot more independent labels and newer ways of thinking, thanks a lot to technology. You don't have to print, a million vinyl records or a million CDs and worry about how to get them in every store in the country. You can record something, press a button, and now it's on Spotify. So the overhead has gone way down. So you don't need a lot of these lopsided deals anymore. And I'm actually writing a book about what are new ways of approaching artist record label deals that are more fair and more equitable. So now the new elements of a recording contract for an artist are what is the basis of the contract? Are you going to basically, am I hiring you as the label? Am I hiring you and you are going to make these works for me and I'm going to own them outright? Or are you going to retain ownership and just give me the permission, the license to use them for a particular period of time? The idea of artists owning their own copyrights is such a new thing, but also such an empowering thing that, the economic usefulness in life from a label's standpoint of a new recording is probably 5 to 10 years, and you can get a lot of that value back because there's a shelf life to any new media. But the artists always holds that control, and they have that reversionary interest, which I think is really fair and reasonable these days. So there's a lot of deals that are talking about who owns what. The other most important deal is how is money distributed? Is it a traditional royalty split like the old days where you're going to get 10% once all that money is paid back? Or are you going to make 50%? Basically, I give you the music, you give me the money, we're in business together. Like I said, term is a big one. How long is this deal going to be for? Is it going to be for the next 2 years, or is it going to be for the next 20 years? And from there, there's a million other deal points. Big in the industry right now is the idea that a label wants every single right you might have. So you're a musician, but you also might act one day, or you might write a book, or you might do this and do that, or you might sell t-shirts. They want, by investing in you, they want a right to all of those royalty streams, which is what was first considered a 360 deal, and now it's considered just like a multiple rights deal. But the fear and the risk in that is only enter those types of deals if who's asking for those rights has the means to exploit those rights. In other words, if I'm signing over my rights to you for future books and film and television and all those other things not related to my music, then you have to have the ability to get me those types of jobs. Because if you don't, you've got these rights, I can't do anything with them anymore, but you're not going to do anything with them because you don't have that skill set.
Yeah, and then the artists wouldn't be able to even express themselves even when they have the opportunity, because they wouldn't be able to make money through that part of their creativity.
Absolutely.
And Atlanta is like the Hollywood of the South. How has that affected your practice in Georgia? Do you also represent movie stars or movie studios?
Yeah, absolutely. That really was the catalyst to our firm here in Georgia being successful. It was in 2014, Georgia legislature passed what was at the time the most comprehensive nationwide tax incentives for films. You get a tax rebate, a credit of 30% of all your spend here in the state of Georgia, which can also be brokered, meaning which helps you get a film funded, meaning if I'm a small production studio and I want to get funding for my film, I can actually sell my 30% tax credit to a corporation like Coca-Cola, who is now getting that 30% tax credit on a much bigger pot. So it's been great. Year over year, the industry has grown. Year over year, we have the largest growth of any economic spend in the country, and it's largely due to the fact that these were very aggressive and very good incentives with no limits, no caps on them. And so that brought a lot of people into the state. There's a bunch of films and television studios that popped up in the Atlanta area, Savannah, where we are. There are so many productions just because it's an old historic town that you can get that period piece type look. And we're also 15 minutes away from the beach. So you can really make Savannah look like anything as well. I mean, they filmed Baywatch here, and they made it look like South Beach, but it's in the middle of Georgia, not California. So yeah, it's been huge. Each year it gets bigger and bigger. We primarily represent, on the film side of things, we primarily represent production companies because they're the ones that come in that have the most needs. When a production comes to town, they've got any need that basically like a small city would need. They need contracts, they need dry cleaning, they need permits, they need, you name it. And we help them negotiate collective bargaining agreements with the unions. We help with their location releases, with their contracts to procure talent. We really handle every aspect, any legal aspect that a production might have, and that's really where we've been focused. We do represent some talent, but talent is its own ball of wax because their needs are completely different, and just the mentality and the ethos of talent can be a little bit difficult to deal with.
So when you're representing a talent, for instance, do you have to deal with the talent directly, or do you deal with their managers and or agents?
It really depends. It depends on how involved the talent wants to be in their career. We've had situations where the talent is the one who is directly communicating with us and reviewing our notes on contract and asking questions. And we have other times where we've technically represented talent, but everything gets funneled through a manager or an agent, and we've never actually spoke with them. But it just depends. And then there's other times where we represent the production, but given something that happened on set, now we are kind of filling in to also represent the talent. One thing that happened here in town was there was this movie that was filming, and you can quickly search TMZ and find out who I'm talking about. But there was this movie that was filming, and an actor who was pretty well known for being kind of brazen and getting drunk and starting some things. He asked a cop for a cigarette. The cop said no. He pushed the cop, and that's all hell broke loose there. He got arrested. He got a middle of the night phone call from a production company that said, "We need this actor on set for this movie tomorrow. You need to go bail him out." And so that's something else that we've done. We bailed out A-list celebrities that have gotten too drunk in our city. So you just never know what the practice of entertainment law is gonna bring. Is it a contract? Is it bailing out a celebrity? Is it some other random lawsuit that they just got served with? It's definitely interesting.
Thank you. Everyone talks about or throw the word royalty, royalties everywhere. What does it really mean?
Would you say the royalties?
Yes, what does it mean?
Royalties are really just a revenue stream. In the music world, royalties are going to be what the artist might expect to receive based off of the sales and plays that that artist receives online. So it's just going to be, the royalty is a defined term usually in a contract, and it can mean anything. It can mean, you can define it to mean any and all gross revenue, or you can define it to mean the net receipts, which are then further defined as, gross revenue minus every other expense we've ever paid for, and that royalty is going to be very low.
So how can an artist know when it is fair or unfair? How do you determine that? How do you determine the industry standard?
Yeah, so one of the big things to do is just to acknowledge that as an artist, you're not going to know everything, all the ins and outs of it, which is a good reason to call an entertainment lawyer who is familiar with the industry norms. But also look at what's being offered. If there's upfront money, how does the label expect to make that money back? Are they going to say, we'll just reimburse that money based off of the money that comes in, and then we'll split everything 50-50? If so, that's pretty fair, because they've got hard costs. Those hard costs come in. Now we're out of the red. We'll split everything that comes. Or are they saying they're going to start making money immediately, and your piece of the pie is going to have to go towards making that money back? That's more unfair. That's the older way of doing it. Unfortunately, if you're a brand new artist that doesn't have a lot of traction, hasn't had a lot of releases and commercial successes, you might have to start with a bottom tier contract. And a lot of these big superstars did start with that low contract. And it wasn't until they found some success and that initial contract expired that they could either hop to another label or negotiate an even better deal, where now they own their masters. Now they've got a royalty split or a revenue share that's more fair. But it really depends on what your goals are in the industry. If you are dead set on signing to a major label and you are a new artist that doesn't have a big long track record of success, you're going to have to play the game a little bit. If you want to only be in a situation that is completely fair, then you're going to have to wait around, or you're going to have to adjust the types of people you're reaching out to. More of your smaller record labels, independent record labels, are a lot more likely to offer more non-traditional deals, fairer deals.
Better deals. During the lockdown, you decided to start like a pop-up concert in your neighborhood. Tell us about this.
Absolutely. So I can't stress enough just how down I was on music when I decided to go to law school. I basically put my guitar down, went to law school, and didn't really look back. It was something that was my entire identity for 10 solid years. I was playing a couple hundred shows a year and writing all these songs and recording to just nothing. It was it. And I kind of needed that break because I felt so beaten up by the industry, and so harmed by the industry, that I needed that break. But it's still in me, and it's still something that I love, something that I do. So during COVID, my wife and I moved to this new street in Savannah, and one of our neighbors, as a way of getting people out of their house and cheering people up, because those first few months were really scary and you're stuck in your house and you don't know what's going on. He started this thing where he set up his own little speaker on his front porch. Everybody sat in their front yards respectfully. And he just sang some songs. He was an Irish singer that played in Irish bars for 30 years or so. And he just needed to do it because that's who he is. And so then the guy, my neighbor to the left, said, well, I'm a music teacher at the local college and I want to perform too. So he sang some songs and they did that for a week or two. And then they said, well, you need to meet Ryan. He's our newest neighbor and he was a singer-songwriter and he's also a musician and maybe he'd want to sing for us. And at that point, I hadn't played guitar or sang for anybody in 6 years or so. But I said, yeah, I'll give that a shot. And for almost a year, every Sunday, we would all get together and then neighbors would come out and sit on the sidewalk or in their front yards. And we'd all take turns singing songs on our porches. And it really reconnected me with music. And it was a great kind of healing way for me to come back into the industry on my own terms, knowing what I know, having gone through the other side.
Wow, what a way to give back to the community. How can people contact you?
Absolutely. So the phone number you see on the screen, that's our office line. That'll get you right connected to us. The other way of checking us out is online at the Bowen, BOWEN, lawgroup.com. You can find out all about us. You can listen to our podcast. You can reach out to us on the Connect Us page. That's the best way to reach us, and we're always here to talk.
Yes, you can contact Ryan by phone at 912-544-2050. Again, 912-544-2050. And Ryan, it's been wonderful talking to you for the past hour. What does it mean to you to come on this show, Legal Angle, to talk to our audience?
Well, thank you so much. I really love speaking with you as well. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. It's really great speaking about the entertainment industry with different audiences, just because there's so much that isn't known about kind of the ins and outs. And anytime I can help educate people on how not to get taken advantage of, I find immense pleasure out of that. So I really appreciate that, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your candor, and thank you for enlightening us. And for those of you watching us at home or listening to this on your radio or on your phone or anywhere, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time and we appreciate your contribution. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and stay blessed. Bye for now.